Hello and welcome back to The Fixture by WICC. I'm your host, Meg Linehan. I'm a staff writer at The Athletic covering women's soccer, and I'm finally back with you for a full-length episode of the show because it is finally time for the return of Champions League in Europe. Before we break down the matchups, a quick news update on some international transfer news which broke earlier this week. Rose Lavelle is headed to Manchester City alongside fellow U.S. women's national team midfielder Samantha Mewis. But adding some intrigue to this transfer, before the signing was announced, the Washington Spirit traded her NWSL rights to OL Reign in exchange for the Reign's natural first-round pick in 2022, plus $100,000 in allocation money, with even more on the line potentially in the future, depending on her return to play. For Lavelle, she's on a one-year contract with Manchester City with a mutual option for a second year. Now let's move our attention fully over to Europe. The 8 remaining teams in this competition all advanced back in October of 2019, so it's been a solid 9 months since we last had matches for this tournament. As of right now, it does not look very promising for Americans to be able to watch most of the remaining games, and here's why. As of right now, television rights up until the final are usually handled by the home team for each match. And while there are major adjustments in order to determine the champions of Europe for 2020, including a knockout format and a centralized location in Spain with only 2 stadiums, it doesn't look like the TV rights will actually end up bundled in time. The silver lining is that this should be easier for the next edition of the tournament from 2021 into 2022, which also includes centralized marketing and TV rights. Rather than a round of 16, there will actually be a group stage. All of these changes are part of UEFA's 5-year plan for women's football called A Time for Action. In the meantime, though, we still have the quarterfinals to dig into, so let's get into the preview. Let's start with Glasgow City versus Wolfsburg. Now, if there's a David versus Goliath matchup of these quarterfinals, it's this one. Glasgow City needed financial backing from an outside source in order to even participate, and their last competitive match was in February. The team has been able to return to training. All signs point to Wolfsburg moving on to the semifinals by the end of the day on Friday. They've been playing regular games thanks to their return to play in Germany in May and wrapped up another league title. In fact, Wolfsburg only allowed 8 goals the entire season in domestic play. Also on Friday, Atletico Madrid versus Barcelona. Now there might be some complications with this game due to positive COVID-19 tests for Atletico, but more on that in a minute. My expectation is that Barcelona, who has been playing some tune-up matches and has not had their training interrupted, has an advantage for this Spain v Spain quarterfinal. On Saturday, Arsenal takes on PSG. Arsenal has been training with some friendly matches. They've also been training on penalties, but PSG has also had 2 matches via the Coupe de France, though they ended up losing to Lyon via penalties. I think this one could be the most interesting match of the quarterfinals, and Arsenal have the most pressure on them for a major performance as they won't even qualify for the next edition of Champions League unless they win the entire thing this time around. That said, I think I might actually be giving the edge to PSG here, but my guess is this one is going to be really close, and all that training for penalties might just pay off for Arsenal. Then finally, Lyon faces off against Bayern Munich, which is a fun doubling of that exact matchup in the Men's Champions League, though that one on Wednesday for the men is a semifinal, and this one for the women is a quarterfinal. The odds here are probably reversed as well, with Lyon hoping to keep the momentum from their recent title going into defending their Champions League title this month. Bayern, like Wolfsburg, has been playing competitive matches, and they've also had some preseason tune-ups as well. You're going to want to keep an eye on Julia Gwynn, who had a hat trick against FC Zurich earlier this month. Of course, we are attempting to hold major tournaments in the summer of 2020, so here's the major complicating factor for Champions League: COVID-19. With all 8 teams heading to Spain for the rest of the tournament, there's certainly a focus on how the country is handling a rise in cases, though officials aren't quite calling this rise a second wave just yet. Now, UEFA has released their return to play document, which applies to all competitions, men's and women's, and covers medical and operational procedures. The governing body stresses that everyone is responsible for minimizing the risk for games resuming, including, as they say in the document, the cooperation, behavior, and understanding of the teams, their players, officials, and the technical staff. UEFA also states that if everyone doesn't respect these rules, there could be serious consequences for the staging of international matches. those serious consequences could be on the line for at least one team in this competition. Atletico Madrid had to suspend training and close its training center with multiple players testing positive for COVID-19 less than 2 weeks out from their quarterfinal date, though the players have been asymptomatic. The game will proceed as scheduled as long as Atletico can field 13 players against Barcelona, including at least one goalkeeper, according to UEFA's return to play protocol. Official updates from the club have been few and far between, so this situation could be fluid up until the match actually happens. Make sure you're following at ICC Women for all the latest updates. Now let's get into the power rankings of the 8 teams still left standing at this point. Now obviously my picks for who advances are going to impact these, with my top 4 picks, so the teams that I expect to make the semifinals, taking the top 4 spots on the power rankings. So let's start from number 8 and go from there. I think Glasgow City is definitely the Cinderella story of the Champions League. The Scottish side has a steep climb to upset Wolfsburg, but the joy of this format is anything can happen, right? Next, I have Atletico Madrid at number 7, which right now is really mostly due to the fact that they can't actually train. I don't think there's a way that this doesn't affect their performance. Next 2 teams are pretty close. To be honest, I think these could go either way. Both have their own advantages. For number 6, I've got Bayern, though again, they're likely to benefit from Germany's return to play, but they're also up against Lyon, a true Champions League powerhouse. For number 5, I've got Arsenal. I think PSG Arsenal, again, could end up going either way, so I am leaning PSG, which means Arsenal ends up at the number 5 spot. At number 4, Barcelona, I think they have the advantage over Atletico Madrid, but they'll end up with the winner of Glasgow City versus Wolfsburg, and I don't see them making it past Wolfsburg in a semifinal. Number 3, PSG. I think they have what it takes to make the semifinals, but I'm not sure if they have what it takes to make it past potentially Lyon. Number 2, I've got Wolfsburg here. I think they've got a solid path to the final, but of course they also have to take on and defeat number 1, Lyon. They've still got the roster, they've got the history, and while they might not have Ada Hegerberg back from injury, I think they're the favorites to lift the trophy. And speaking of Lyon, they're no stranger to titles, including last summer's win at the Women's International Champions Cup. I was actually at the tournament experiencing the differences of the August humidity in North Carolina shortly after getting a taste of the heat wave in France for the Women's World Cup, which also meant a week in Lyon for the semifinals and final. Lyon started the tournament by defeating Atletico Madrid 1-0 before getting a rematch against the NWSL's North Carolina Courage for the final. Now in 2018, the Courage had managed to hold on to earn the first ever women's ICC title thanks to a goal from Heather O'Reilly, but in 2019, Lyon was able to turn the tables in another close 1-0 game. Lucy Bronze got the ball over to Jennifer Marazan centrally, who one-timed a beautifully curling ball for the only goal of the game. And Lyon was able to hold on for the rest of the match, despite the Courage's best attempts to equalize at their home stadium in front of over 8,000 fans. So last week, we asked you to choose between some players who are about to feature in Champions League to decide who would have the bigger impact, and as always, you were ready to vote. Now, it didn't matter where you voted, you all have high expectations of Wendy Renard of Lyon compared to Pernille Harder of Wolfsburg, with a 56% vote on Instagram and 64% on Facebook for Wendy. Here's the fun one of these polls, very split on Kim Little of Arsenal versus Angela Sosa of Atletico Madrid. So Little had the edge on Instagram, 63% to Sosa's 37%, but that number was actually pretty much reversed on Facebook, with Little earning 35% of the vote to Sosa's 65%. No matter what, we're hopefully in for some great games this weekend. As always, make sure you tune in to the conference call. This week, Ali Long is joined by Jackie Simpson and Claire Faulkner. You can find me at It's Meg Linehan. Follow at ICC Women on Twitter and Instagram for all the latest. If you're a Facebook person, like the International Champions Cup page so you never miss a video drop. Till next time, when we have some actual Champions League semifinals to discuss.